Numbness is a very common factor when you're dealing with grief. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be your entire grief experience, but let's walk together and I'll share with you some ways that you can protect yourself from when that numbness wears off and you actually start to feel some of the emotions associated with grief. Hey friend, welcome back to Grief Questions Answered. I'm Eric, and it's my goal with these videos to share everything that I've learned about how to survive, find support in the loneliness of grief, and how to intentionally get back up and live beyond the loss of a loved one. If this grief tip doesn't help you today, I am confident it can and will help you at some point in the future, so be sure to watch this video and save it to watch later. So today's question comes from Natalie. And she asks me, what if I'm numb? And as soon as she asked that question, I understood exactly what she meant. Look, loss is one of these horrible and inevitable aspects of being a human being. We are at some point most likely going to experience the loss of somebody that we know, somebody that we love, somebody that was close to us in our lifetime. And there can be a lot of different responses to that loss. And one of those responses could be numbness, where you don't really feel anything. Yes, the initial news was potentially shocking, but there wasn't anything that followed that news. You're just going through the motions of waking up. Maybe you're thinking about that person, but there's no real emotional response that you're having about that loss. And that doesn't mean that you don't love them. I want to make that distinction. It doesn't mean that you don't care about them or that you didn't love them or they weren't important to you. What it means is that this is just your response to the loss right now. And when you're experiencing that, that can be a little disconcerting because, like, geez, did I care? Why am I not upset about this? Here's the thing. At some point, you're going to feel the emotions associated with that loss. Shock is a normal response to losing a loved one, which could be followed by that numbness, where at this point, you're just not ready to start processing that grief right at that moment. And that's okay. Now, what happens inevitably, though, is that this numbness will start to wear off and those emotions will start to creep in. And sometimes they can hit you like a brick wall. They can come right at you just out of the blue. Or other times you'll start to feel like you're kind of ramping up emotionally as the days and weeks pass. And now look, and sometimes that numbness could be because you've been dealing with some anticipatory grief as well. You know, maybe this person was sick for a long time and you have done a lot of grieving because you know that this loss was coming and you've gone through some other emotions ahead of time. And not to say that you're not going to have more emotions now, but maybe they're just not going to be as heavy. And so it feels like numbness. But either way, one of the best ways to protect yourself from that and a wave of emotions that may come at you is to journal. Now, I realize that may sound a little, hokey. How many people actually journal? I don't know. But for me, I know that when I write down how I'm processing my grief, I feel like that allows me to kind of open up and explore some emotions in a very safe manner for myself. I can regulate through my journaling how much I'm willing to kind of process my grief at that particular time consciously. A lot of the grief is processed subconsciously, and it's, again, those are when those emotions just kind of come out of the blue. But for you, how does this help you? How does this work, or how can this help you? So there's a couple of ways you can look at this, okay? Journaling is just one way. Another way is to give yourself some time to experience the emotions when they come up. Again, if they come out of the blue and you're just not expecting it, you may need some time to kind of sob for a little while just to process that release, to process those emotions. And as you know, grief kind of comes in waves. And so you might be fine 1 minute laughing, but then a thought pops into your head, and the realization that that person is no longer here hits you, and you just feel emotional about that. And so, again, you can process the emotions as you need to. You can try to write out how you're feeling in a journal. You can even go for a walk in your neighborhood to think, however that works for you. Some people turn to their faith, which is absolutely fine because they find solace in that faith. But everybody's different, and everybody needs something different. But what is going to happen is that at some point, that numbness will wear off and you will begin to process that grief. And I'm not suggesting at all that it's always going to be a slam into those heavy emotions, but they could come in that manner. Most likely what's going to happen is that you're going to find yourself having moments throughout the day that are difficult to navigate, where you might want to be alone, you might want to just step back from what you're working on and take a 5 to 10, 15 minute, half an hour break, whatever works for you. And look, if you're at work and it's overwhelming you, go have a conversation with your boss and saying, look, I didn't realize this was hitting me, but it's hitting me. Can I take off for the afternoon, or can I take the next hour to just, spend some time processing? Whatever may work for you. Everybody's got a different work situation. No matter what, it's really important that you do give yourself the runway and the permission to figure this out as you need to figure it out. There is no timeline. There is no one right way to navigate your grief. There is no agenda. There is nobody's pace but your own. I mean, it's just, we have to kind of process it as it comes. And you don't have to process it without having some idea of not only what to expect, but what to do to move through those moments. Everybody's different. What works for you? Maybe you've experienced some numbness over a recent loss, and that wasn't your experience the last time you had to go through a loss and navigate grief. And so maybe it's kind of thinking back on what worked back then and bringing that to work for you now in this situation. I have experienced several losses in the last 10 years. I lost my daughter Zoe 10 years ago. That one was immediately emotionally difficult to deal with. A couple of years ago, I had to put my favorite dog down because she was sick, and it was time, and it was really hard. And I processed those emotions. And then just last week, I lost my mom. And this was one of those situations where this loss has, in a sense, been a little bit numbing. And so Natalie's question was very appropriate for this time, because there's been a lot of anticipatory grief with my mom. She's been sick with cancer. She has dementia. She had dementia, and my mom hadn't been my mom for the last couple of years. And so it was really kind of challenging to navigate this loss, knowing that, she's no longer physically here. And I had spent months mourning, not being able to have a conversation, an open conversation with my mom, and maybe her understanding what I was saying and her being able to respond to me. And some of you may understand this type of thing with dementia. All I could say is that we all process grief differently. At no point is it that you didn't love your loved one or didn't care about them, or because you're not emotional about it that their life didn't matter to yours. And so as you're moving through this difficult part of processing your grief, give yourself some grace to take the journey as you need to take it, just one step at a time, and realize you're not alone in this. And it may feel like you're alone, but if you have questions, reach out, let me know, and as always, I hope this helps. Do you have a question about grief that I can answer for you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't done so yet, click that subscribe button down below, as this is one of the best ways to get notified of new videos just like this and to show support for the channel. Let's continue to walk together, and I'll see you in the next video.